Well, sure. I mean, you've now had a majority of members of the House of Representatives, actually a bipartisan majority of the House of Representatives vote to keep the government funded and functioning and open. You've similarly had a bipartisan majority of the United States Senate vote to keep the government open, functioning, and funded. But you have a smaller minority of the Senate that has blocked the vote from happening. So they've invoked the filibuster option, which allows the minority party to even block the vote from coming up for a final passage for this to take effect. It's my understanding that this is almost never utilized in the case of a continuing resolution budget where you're just funding the government under the current status that we've already been funding the government at. I would remind your viewers that this is the same budget that the Democrats themselves put together under President Biden, that we are simply carrying funding forward on for another couple of months to allow us the time to negotiate some of the other budget issues that we've been trying to settle. And also remind folks that the Senate itself has really not had the ability and the time to do the full budget that you would ordinarily expect to happen. They've spent a lot of time this year working on nominations and appointments and confirmations of folks. And we took on the budget reconciliation bill earlier this year to extend the tax cuts and provide tax relief to working families throughout our country and throughout Michigan. And that kind of superseded a lot of the ordinary budget negotiations that would take place. So to really account for that, we're saying, hey, let's take an extra 2 months. We'll continue funding at the current level. The Democrats have already voted for this multiple times already. And instead of not even voting for this, they're blocking it from even taking effect or having a vote. So we already have a bipartisan majority voting in support of it. We just don't have enough to get over the 60 vote threshold because of the number of Democrats in the United States Senate. They have enough members that if they want to block something, they can, even though a majority, now a bipartisan majority with a number of Democrats joining Republicans to do this, it's not enough to overcome their ability to block it procedurally.
Sure, and I'm wondering too. I was reading some commentary before this all kind of took place. We knew that it was setting up a government shutdown for weeks and months, and someone brought up the idea of Republicans eliminating the filibuster. Do you have Republicans discussed that? Has that been at any topic that you
Well,
guys have thought of?
I can tell you, I'm not a member of the United States Senate, so that would be up to the Senate to decide how they want to move procedurally in that way. The filibuster has been changed over time. Most recently, just about a month ago, the Democrats in the Senate were blocking, lower, not low ranking, but below the secretary level nominations for federal appointed positions, undersecretaries, deputy secretaries of different departments and different agencies and different roles, ambassadors to different countries, and they were just blocking them altogether and halting any kind of ability to seat people in the roles that they need to do. And that's a core function of what government needs to be able to do. Any president that comes in needs to be able to appoint people to positions that are going to affect the trajectory of what the federal government is doing and provide that leadership and supervisory role that they are empowered to do. And you can't just block every single one of those. So the Senate did change their filibuster rules to account for that. It's my belief that a minority party should not be able to shut down the government if they want to use the filibuster to oppose, you know, um, changes in legislation and in large overhauls of federal policy. And that's kind of what the filibuster has been reserved for. But using it as a tool to shut down the government, to my knowledge, has not been done before. But it would be up to the members of the Senate to decide if they wanted to amend their procedures to account for that.
And historically, the party controlling one or both chambers of the is often seen as bearing negotiation responsibility. Um, do you are you concerned with the optics of this? That people will blame Republicans for the shutdown?
Well, I think any reasonable person and a reasonable reporting of what's taken place would show that you already have a bipartisan majority in the House and a bipartisan majority in the Senate. This isn't just Republicans that voted to fund the government. You actually have Republicans and Democrats in both the House and the Senate voting to do that. So on the you know on the spectrum of like who's responsible for this, the party that is in the minority, meaning that Americans went out and voted last year in the election They elected Republicans to the House of Representatives in a governing majority. They elected a Republican majority in the United States Senate, and they elected a Republican president. The party that claims to defend democracy at all costs, why are they standing in the way of the democratically elected folks who are in positions to make decisions for our country on even the most basic things as funding the government? So I don't know of a time in the past where we have seen a reciprocal issue. Usually, when you see a government shutdown, you have one party in control of one chamber, another party in control of the other. House and Senate are under different control, or the presidents of a different party as the members of the House and the Senate. Something like that is typically what leads to a government shutdown. This is a unique instance where Republicans, as you said, are in control of the House and the Senate and the White House, but they're being blocked procedurally by members of the minority party from even having a final vote on this particular issue. So anybody who's fair who looks at this would show that the party that is responsible for blocking this really is singularly the Democratic Party. And again, this is funding that they've already voted for a number of times in the past.
And I do want to talk a little bit about Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's been on a little bit of a. She's been on CNN. She's been all over, blaming GOP congressional leaders for the shutdown. And I want to know if you agree with that assessment. She's concerned with the midterms and Republicans doing poorly then. Do you share those same concerns? Do you agree with her assessment?
Well, look, I was elected to do a job that I got elected to last year to do the job that I have for this term of office. I think, one of the most foremost among that is, the basic functions of government and funding the government. And that's what I voted to do almost a month ago now, and that the Democrats in the Senate have blocked from just keeping the lights on, paying our troops in a more durable way. I was thankful that the president made, move some funds around to be able to pay the troops today, but that's not a guarantee that that's going to keep going into the future. We also have federal law enforcement agencies that aren't being paid. There's a lot of damage that is being done by Democrats by simply blocking this from even coming up for a vote. So instead of worrying about, who's to blame and what's happened and what's going to happen next year and everything else, I'm focused on what can we do to fund the government, keep the lights on, deliver the critical services that people rely on, pay our military, pay our law enforcement, and everything else. That's the vote that we took a few weeks ago in the House, again, with a bipartisan majority. That has now had a bipartisan majority of support in the Senate. So I can't speak for what other members are saying or doing. If you want to ask them, I would welcome you to go to their district. I represent the 7th congressional district in Michigan, and that's what I'm responsible for my vote for.
And just to touch on Michigan as well,
This is gonna have to be last question. We're out of time as well.
Yep,
So
yep,
30 seconds, 45 seconds.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, what guidance are you offering to Michigan-based federal employees and contractors that have been impacted by the shutdown?
Yeah, I've spent some time calling some folks in my district that have been affected by this and meeting with individuals who have as well. And this has, real ripple effects throughout our economy as this endures longer. And, my advice is certainly contact our members of the Senate, our 2 United States senators, and tell them to reopen the government. The ball is really in their hands to be able to do that. They're capable of voting to reopen the government. And that's something that I think ought to be done. And then also on a more individualized basis, folks can reach out to my office, whether they work for a federal agency, whether they have a federal program that they rely on, whether they're a contractor or some other, interfacing with the federal government. We can help them through questions they have about the shutdown of what services can still be delivered. Then go to my website, barrett.house.gov, and we're ready to help folks in any way that we can to get through this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.